ese hombre holding up the bottle. Look a little closer, cigar and Moscato. An actor in improv coming from Chicago. Auto, make way for Paul Vato. Pablo, si hablo con mi taco.
I forgot to mention that there are sound effects. You're going to get all these different surprises, and if it gets to be too much,
those weren't real people.
Normally when you start, it automatically starts out with a little bit of clapping. There's laughter. There's oof emojis. You know, I know that you're used to being received with applause and accolades, so you know this should feel comfortable for you, buddy.
Oh, but of course, I mean, I grew up with Jewish parents, so I applauded in every room entry.
I can almost picture that, Jon and Peggy, of course. I miss them. I love them. But let's get started then. Welcome and thanks to those that are in our audience and those that are watching either streaming on YouTube or Twitch or Facebook. My guest today is Jon Barinholtz. He is a comedic actor, improviser from the Chicagoland area. So you know he's got to be good. He's got to be funny. And he's found a lot of success in the world of Hollywood. But it's great because I've known you since you were a baby, I feel.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. It's so good to see you. I haven't seen anyone's face for years. But yeah, it's so great, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, it is my absolute pleasure. You know, when we first met, of course, you know, your brother's Ike Barinholtz. We're here to talk about you and mostly Alan, your father, but But, you know, I knew you as Ike's little brother. I didn't realize what a comedic force you were. So my apologies for that. You know, you were just Ike's little brother, but you have definitely come into your own.
I don't know if I was a comedic force. I think I was just like excited onlooker in those days because it was just such a fun, you know, there were the Chicago days when he was still in town there and I was like in 7th grade and he was doing comedy and like watching that and seeing him being like, oh, this is a thing you could do. That's awesome. Was like, just like, I knew I liked it, but I didn't know I wanted to do it. And then when I would come and visit him when I was in college, like on my spring breaks, and my friends and I would come out and like we'd hang out with him. And that's where I hung with you a bunch. I saw you guys all in LA doing it. And I was like, oh, it was even more real. And there was also like, you know, success behind it with Mad TV and like getting to like, go to set and seeing that world and just became so tangible. And I was like, oh, this is fun and a thing that I could do too, which is like, it made it real. And then I was like, okay, well, I gotta get good so I can do this because it's too fun to miss out on. And yeah. So yeah, excited onlooker in those days, man. It was so much fun to come out here and hang.
That's wonderful that, you know, Ike was an inspiration and maybe myself as well. And a few of the other, especially the Chicago people, I would imagine that you saw coming up in Chicago, whether it was, you know, Jordan Peele or, yes. You know, any of the people, Dave Stassen, my goodness, you know, a good friend of your brother's and yours, I would imagine, because I know that you worked on Chicago Party Ant, which I think is a fantastic show and so funny. But it's wonderful to hear that and that it inspired you. Where did you go to school? Where were you studying?
So I went through high school in Chicago, and then I went out to upstate New York. It's a small liberal arts college called Colgate, and it's like a lot of people haven't even heard of it. It's kind of middle of nowhere, upstate New York. I went there primarily because I knew I wanted to get out of Chicago because I wanted a different experience. So I was like, it's New York or California. I don't know why I put that on my head, but that's what I did. And I visited Colgate just on like the most beautiful day. And it was just like a picture perfect campus. And it was Division I for their athletic system, even though they're a smaller school, and I could run there. It was small enough to where I could run and be competitive and like kind of, I was a big runner in high school and in college and in my 20s. So that was like a huge thing for me. And I chose it for that and because they had a great archaeology program. And I went to school thinking I'd be an archaeologist because I wanted to be Indiana Jones, and like very quickly learned archaeology is not Indiana Jones. And then like the head of the department left to go on a dig in Israel. And the department combined with like the anthropology department And then it was just like all football players who were like, just wanted the A because it became like, so I was like, oh, this is kind of boring and not what I thought it was. And on a whim, I took a creative writing class and I loved it. And I was bad at first. I was really bad, but I loved it. And I had I think we had to write 10 assignments in the semester, and 9 of mine sucked. And then I had one that was, I think, okay enough to where the teacher pulled me aside and was like, hey, this is what you should focus on, is this area of your writing. And it's really good. And she really kind of fostered that. And, you come across these people along your life who just say the right thing that in that moment I was like, oh yeah, you're right. And I went heavy into writing. And then right around that time was when I started coming to see you guys out in Los Angeles and go on set on Mad TV and, see that world and be like, oh, putting this together with, the writing side, comedy writing side. And then, oh, the performing side, I don't know if I'm really down to do the performing side, but maybe. And I went back to Colgate, I think my second year, and tried out for the improv group. And it's a pretty storied improv group there. It's the guys the group at the college is called Charred Goosebeak, but it's all the guys who then graduated from Colgate and formed Broken Lizard, the Super Troopers guys, and Julian Vigman also. They all went to Colgate and they were 15 years ahead of me, but the improv group there was really good. And I got in and was really bad, but loved it. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I want to do. And yeah, that was kind of the start of the performing.
That was my next question, whether you actually studied improv. Now, were you able to study any improv in Chicago at all?
Yeah,
or
I was. I seeing my brother come up, and he left college after 1 year and then moved back to Chicago. And I was in 7th grade when he started just doing improv at night, and I would go and watch him with me and my 7th grade friends were these chubby nerds who were going to an improv bar in the back. And, we were picking up on most of it, but really what I picked up on was the fun of it. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And back in those days you had just it hadn't really been a springboard yet. That's not true. Farley had already come through and a couple other people had come through, but really it was this was the heart of the golden age where you had all these amazing performers that you would see on stage. And it was really exciting to watch. I then didn't try it again I never tried it then. I didn't try it until college, my sophomore year. But then I came back to Chicago my summer in between colleges, and I would do one summer I just did level 1 with IO with Sharna. I remember Tim Baltz, who I don't know if you watch Mighty Gemstones, but Tim Baltz is in my class and he was in level 1 too. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's really fucking funny. This guy's really good. And I was very bad. I was, I think 19. I was very nervous. I remember I'd have I'd steal my dad's gin out of the freezer and take a shot of gin. And I hated gin. I'd take a shot of gin and smoke a cigarette before every class. And I hated cigarettes because I ran, but it's the only thing that calmed me. And I would go and I'd do the class. And so I did level 1. I liked it. The next summer, between my junior and senior year, I did the summer intensive. So I did the whole program, met some of my really good friends there who I'm still good buddies with. And one of them, Thomas Whittington, really funny guy. We stayed in touch. And around May of my senior year, his senior year too, we were like, hey, should we move back to Chicago and do this? And we were like, yeah, let's do it. So I got back to Chicago in June of 2005, met him with his U-Haul truck, and we moved into our apartment right then. And we lived in Wrigleyville, the heart of the improv scene there. And this is before Wrigleyville is what it is now. But just so much fun. Those years were so formative and made me really realize that I thought I wanted to do it. And, you're 22. So what do you fucking know? That made me realize it wasn't I wanted to do it at that point. It's well, I have to do it now because it's so much fun. And that scene, it's electric and you make such good friends and it's nice, supportive people. And Chicago's, I haven't been back in years, but it's a funny town. It's like people are funny there and funny wins there. I think like out in LA, it's a little different where it can be more popularity. It can be more like it's for more exposure. The end game in Chicago is really like Second City or like getting comfortable enough where you can like book some commercials out of there. Like that's what a living actor is in Chicago. Or at the time, now there's like 40 Dick Wolf shows there. So like there's a lot of work there. But at the time it was like ER, which was serious acting, and then Second City, and the occasional movie would come through, which is just to say that the numbers, if you look at the numbers of like, oh, there's 5 people on a Second City stage or 6 people, and maybe another 30 people in the touring company that you can actually get paid for, versus the amount of people in the classes there through IO and Second City and Annoyance Theater and all the people on teams, the numbers aren't great. Like, which is all to say, like the people doing it are doing it because they love it. The end game is doing it. It's not necessarily the end game is like, I'm going to monetize this and it's going to, elevate me to the next level. And, I think like anything else, it eventually turned into that because so many people started springboarding out of there and like you saw what could happen. But for the most part, the thrill of it was just doing it. It was the end to the means. And like, that was a really exciting thing to be a part of. And yeah, I love my time in that city.
I went back and I was on a show called What About Joan, which was a Joan Cusack show, basically.
Oh, yeah.
1999, back in the 1900s, I should say. And I remember recently going through the cast list and seeing all these other improvisers. And it was kind of like, oh, they went through everybody else. And then I finally got my shot. So you're right. I mean, they're hiring all the improvisers that they can. And then it's like, but where do you go from there? And so I think I did the right thing by then going, okay, I got on this TV show, sure got canceled season 2. And so all my episodes, I think I did one, the season finale, and then didn't come back. But it then motivated me to move to LA. I'm like, why struggle in Chicago when you can also struggle in LA?
Where the work is. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the ceiling is just this. The ceiling's so much higher out here in LA, and the work was there. If I love Chicago so much, and if even like a tenth of the industry was there at the time, I would have considered staying more. Like if I knew like, oh, there's more I could do. Second City was kind of, I wasn't good enough to get onto stage at the time while I was there. I got good in Chicago and I learned so much. But I think like the most I learned was how to be bad and how to not let that worry you. And like, just like, you're nervous before a show or you're excited before a show, no matter what, but the stakes are just so much lower. And I think like the greatest lesson in Chicago was from the Annoyance Theater, which is I think like IO taught you how to be a team member and Second City taught you the formula of comedy, like A plus B equals laugh, but Annoyance Theater taught you how to fail and you could do anything you want there. And I don't think I really had what I thought was funny about me that I could project. I knew what I thought was funny when I would watch things, but I didn't know like what made me special or different, or like what I could contribute until I went to Annoyance and I was allowed to like fall into myself and realize like, oh, this is what I like doing. And it didn't matter if anyone else did at that point. And of course, once you find that thing, then you're like, oh, well, that's what it is. That's your thing, where you don't give a shit if anyone thinks it's funny because it's bringing you joy as opposed to kind of chasing what you think is funny. And Annoyance really let me do that there and gave me the confidence to come out to LA. Cause like 2 years after being in Chicago, I was like, I'm not going to get Second City. There's too many good improvisers ahead of me that will get it. And I don't want to be here for 8 years until I kind of like get good enough to be there. So like you said, why not go out to LA? I have the base now. I can continue it out there. And I very much wanted to go out, but I'm so glad I stayed an extra couple of years. It allowed me to I did the School of Steppenwolf, which really like honed my like straight acting chops. And it allowed me to do like a couple real serious good shows and get to a level where like, I really felt confident coming out to LA, like, okay, I can get work now and I can do this. People call Chicago Comedy College, and that's what it is. Like, I had my 4 years there, and that gave me the confidence to know I could come out here and at least give it a shot. Like, you can't predict anything, but I knew I at least had a shot if I came out here.
100%. I mean, you said so many great things there, and if I can unpack those. But like, Chicago gives you the opportunity to fail. People aren't going to remember. And I remember even back when we moved out back in like 2000, we did our show Touched by an Anglo in Chicago and honed it. Then we brought it to LA because they said, once you get to LA, and back then, of course, you'd have to invite people to come out to your show for representation and things like that. Oh, and if they see you and you're not very good, 10 years later, they're like, I saw them. They're not that good. So you really need to get out to LA with the strong base, with your chops, with a solid show, whether it's a one-person show or an improv show or whatever. But Chicago gives you that ability to fail with almost no repercussions because we're all doing it. Everyone's doing it. And if memory serves, the Annoyance, their philosophy is basically fuck it, just play. So you've learned all these rules at Improv Olympic, IO, rest in peace, and the Second City. But now you go to the Annoyance Theater and just learn how to play and let it go and find your voice there. So that's fantastic. So did you also go through the Second City program?
I did. I did the conservatory there. Met some like just lifelong friends through that too. It was like a really fun program. I liked it because it, that opened more into the, when you get into the later levels, you can, it is improv, but your finale shows are sketches, right? So like the end goal is sketch. So you're writing sketch. And that was just such a thing that I felt super confident in that more than I did the performing side. And so much of how successful you can be is just believing that can be your thing. So whether it was right or wrong, I believed. I was like, oh, well, the writing thing, I got that fucking down. I had great sketches in college. Like, looking back, I'm sure the sketches sucked, but like in my head, I was like, this is my strength. And I was able to lean into that and like really love that part of the Second City program of being able to like build and then curate which sketches were good and like refine that writing process. And aside from watching, my brother come up and realizing that was tangible, the thing that I saw like on TV that made me be like, I have to do this was Mr. Show. I got the VHS tapes of Mr. Show and I was like, this is the funniest thing that there ever was. And to this day, I still think it is. And I was obsessed with getting good at sketch writing, and Second City really allowed me to do that. And then that just fed the performance side, because what I thought was like weak on the performance side for me, I would go on confidently knowing that this is a good sketch and I just now have to learn how to play the sketch correctly. And that gave me confidence in the performing side, and they kind of fed each other then. And then it was like, I was like this fully baked person who was like ready to come out to LA and, give it a shot. Like, I moved out here with a show too, with a couple of buddies. That was like a real polished, great show. And yeah.
You kind of touched, on being a writer, I feel. And what I've heard, it's my understanding, if you're a writer, you will always have work. So you don't necessarily have to be this performer. You've written these great sketches. Maybe it's not your job to actually also perform them like we have to at Second City, but at least you know how, and you know how to write for people, but you can always find the actors to fill those spots. And I don't know if that, maybe Rich Tellerico told me that. He goes, as a writer, you'll always have work. So it's one of those things, and Chicago just cultivates that. And it's the different schools of thought where Improv Olympic or IO, rest in peace. I got that from Brandy Stillwell. She always says rest in peace after IO. Their philosophy is that improv is its final product. It's like jazz music, or the improv is the final product, while Second City is like, no. Improv is a tool that we use to make these sketches and make these solid shows. And that's, our growing pains when I put together Salsation, which became Touched by an Anglo, or Barrio. We became Barrio Speedwagon when we moved to LA. That was our growing pains, because there were people that were purists and they're like, no, we're just an improv group. We're just going to do improv with a Latin flavor per se. And the other half was like, no, we have to use improv to make sketches and solid sketches, and then throw in some improv to show the people, hey, look, we can improvise. So those are, for those that are listening and wondering what the difference is between, the IO or Second City or the Annoyance Theater, I think that's kind of the basis right there, that Second City uses improv to create their final product, which is sketch, and very solid sketches. And that's why people get hired out of there from, for Saturday Night Live, or back then Mad TV, or any of the shows right now.
You're so right. There is this or maybe was, because IO is rest in peace, but the idea of like improv is like a purest form, and, not using it as just another tool you have to be a better actor and creator. There is definitely a place for that. I think like you can have both the conversations at the same time. Where like, yes, there is a place for that. And that is fine. That is totally fine for it to be its own thing. And to me, I felt that, part of the culture of the whole improv scene was, it was camaraderie that was, fueled by drinking, and it was fun, right? It was so much fun. But like with a lot of that, the dark side is like the folks who just, it's their only release. And, you can get caught up in the fact that like, you can lose the sights of like it either being a form of like, I'm doing this for the sake of improv, or I'm doing this for the sake of something else. And what I said before of like, I'm just doing this to do this. There's a great side to that. And there's also a side that can kind of be a trap where like I know some of the funniest guys and girls in Chicago who just didn't want to do more than hang out and drink and do improv, which again is fine. Unless you're not being honest with yourself. Like if you really want more, like I think it's spoken to a lot more now, like I said, because so many people have springboarded and people can see it. But at the time, I just thought that like some of those theaters did a little bit of a disservice to like not have classes where it's like, hey, here's what you can do with this now beyond. And here's how you can, you're performing in my theater for free and I'm making money off you. I'm not calling out anyone specifically. I'm just saying like, as a concept, if I had thousands of people performing at a place that I was, getting free performances out of, knowing that the mutual beneficial relationship is they then got experience and got chops, I would also want to like foster that in a way that I think like Mick and Jen at Annoyance did a really good job too, of like, I remember Mick saying like, say what you want. And if you want to like be on SNL, you should say that. And if you want to, be on a TV show, you should say that. If you want to create a show and be behind the scenes, you should say that. Not saying it just allows you to exist in this nebulousness where you're not really taking any steps forward. And that environment can eat people up like that. And again, there is nothing wrong if you were like, I just want to fucking work my 9 to 5. I want to go to, Improv Olympic or wherever it is, or the playground or whatever it is, and just be with my buddies, have a couple beers, do a show because it's fun, and then go back home. And that's my release. Nothing wrong with that. But I know so many people who wanted that next level, but were afraid to name it and speak of it. There weren't a lot of mentors who would foster that to be like, here's what you can do. And I was very lucky because I had, my brother who I was able to look at and be like, oh, he uses as a lightning rod to then take to, he was able to follow the fun into something that was like greater and build that and use this as a big tool. And so I had that insight, and I was very fortunate that I did. If I didn't have that as a direct family member, I don't know, I might still be, in Chicago right now, like drinking with my buddies and just doing improv a few nights a week, which is like, again, fine. But I know something inside of me would have been like, God, there could have been something more. So an ends to mean itself, but it can also be such a great springboard. And I know so much of the success I've had out here on camera is tied directly to my ability to improvise. I'm sure you've had this experience. Like when you get on a set, and I'm specifically in a comedy show, but for dramas too, but I'm speaking to comedy, and you have the boldness to like tag a line or like you just have a reaction that's not on paper, you stand out. Like it's the comedy acting world is still surprisingly, cardboard in a way when the cameras are rolling, where you have these great writers out here now and you have phenomenal comedic actors, but not everyone can improvise. And it really does elevate you. And I know it's the only reason I've gotten to where I am today and being able to have like steady work.
Wonderful. Well, I love the fact that, and you could have easily said, oh, my brother's famous, he's already on a show, he's doing this, let me just go out there and do it. No, I love the fact that you've done the work. I mean, no one can ever take that away from you. You went through the programs, you went through the IO, rest in peace. You went through the Second City, you went through the Annoyance Theater, you got your training. So you came out here and it wasn't just like, oh, I have a connection, let me go out there and do it. No, you deserve everything. Not that you're saying that you don't. You deserve everything that you've gotten because of the hard work that you put in to become this talented actor, writer, and knowing this. And you've given me an idea. You're right. No one teaches you that. It's like college. You go to college and you learn all these things, but that they don't teach you the real practical world aspects to it. So I think maybe you and I should create a course because we have so much time on our hands, but we should create a course that actually teaches exactly what you were saying, the practical aspect of it, of, speak your truth, speak what you want to do. And then how do we get there? How do you kind of reverse engineer it to get, on Saturday Night Live or Mad TV or any of the shows that are out there and hiring improvisers. And when I took a 10-year hiatus, but when I came back and it was kind of the middle of the pandemic and I was on social audio platforms like Clubhouse, and people were looking at my resume, they're like, oh, wow, you do improv, because it really became one of the most sought after skills to have. Whereas before we were almost like, I don't know, the pigs of theater, where you're like, oh, you're an improviser, whatever, you're not an actor. But now it's like if a director or producer or casting director sees that you have legitimate improv skills, they want you, again, even for auditions, casting directors, like, hey, can we switch that up? Or you guys play together. Okay, we got this. We're improvisers. I may have never improvised with you, Jon, but I know that we know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's that built-in relationship, even if you don't know someone, where you're agreeing to agree. And like, that's the most important thing. And yes, there should be something that exists in the pipeline of these big comedy cities to practically teach you like, hey, this is great. It's also monetizable in a way where like, you don't have to sell out, or like you can do what you want to do. Because that's a big thing, in that community of like, remain true to the art. Yes, of course. Yes, it is remaining true to the art to elevate your craft and get more exposure and like bring what you do to a higher level. So yeah, I think like there should be something that it can teach people like, hey, we for better or for worse, we live in a fucked up, bastardized form of capitalistic society, and you need money to survive. And hey, if you can do that in a way that you're also leaning into something that you love, like, like performing, why not figure out how to do that and do it in a way that like you enjoy and brings you joy? And in terms of like kind of like following in my brother's footsteps, I think like I had a chip in my shoulder in like the best possible way, where it could have had the effect on me looking back. If my brain think this at the time, I would have done it in a heartbeat, because it would have been so much easier and not like made me terrified. But instead, I could have looked at it through the lens of like, he's good, he's made it, and like fucking, it doesn't fucking matter. I just have to go and do it, and it's going to be fine. If I had that type of confidence, I feel like I'd be like president right now. All it did was make me more scared to go into it. Cause I was like, I love this and I find joy in it. And it's like that thing, like, do I not do it because my brother's already made a path through here? And like, do I not do this thing that I love, that I know would bring me joy because the extra eyeballs that would be on me and like how people might think of me, like to follow this. And then I was like, aside from, his massive encouragement, my family's massive encouragement, I just knew like I would be so bummed out if I didn't give it a shot. And I knew that I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I have to do it the right way. And I have to be good. Because if I'm not good, I'll be honest with myself and I'll listen to, I can read a room. And if it's not working, I have other things that bring me joy. This I saw as the thing that was bringing me the most joy. So it was like, I have to follow this. And but like I said, both my parents, but our mom specifically was always like, she's always the Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss, go on your journey. And it was like, this is my journey. And the fact that it's similar to my brother's journey, like in terms of like name of career, doesn't mean it's the same. And one of the most maddening things about this business and one of the most beautiful things is there are no two paths that can be the same. And if it was like medical school, where like you go to medical school, you get your degree, then you I don't even know the path. I was like, I haven't fucking know it, but like, I think it's something like you do your residency at a hospital, something like that. And then eventually you have your practice, but it doesn't fucking exist in this business. It's the Wild West. And for every, yes, you may be able to get your foot in a door because of, nepotism or familial connection or whatever. But when you go through that door, you are under a fucking magnifying glass. And that gave me so much anxiety. So I was like, if I'm really going to do this, I have to make it my own. I have to find out like what I think is funny about me and what I love to do. And that was really the only way. And one of the worst experiences, but also like looking back, great growth experience was, like I said, at Annoyance, pure encouragement. At IO, I never really felt comfortable because there were still people who were contemporaries of my brother who were now teachers who were just still there. And some fucking great, love them. There were a couple that I always felt like were like, well, this fucking kid now. And made me feel uneasy. And it was mostly in my head, but then it was manifested. There was one teacher, I'm not going to say who it was, but there's one teacher who at the end of like our level 5 is like talking about like, and when you go out from here, you're going to go out like, you may make a team, you may not. There's only so many slots. Johnny Barinholtz is going to get one because his fucking brother. And like said it like as a joke, like said it, but like spoke exactly to my fear. And then also like, I was like, you're also like, fuck you. You're also then like poisoning my friends in my class to be like he doesn't deserve a seat at the table. And that ate away at me so much, specifically at IO, where every house team I was on there, I was like, why am I on this fucking team? It would drive me crazy. When you're fucking 24 years old and on one hand, you have blind confidence of a 24-year-old, but the other hand, you just had like, you're so unsure. And I was like, why am I on this team? Do I fucking deserve it? And I always felt a little uneasy there. Whereas Annoyance, I was like, the type of people, for people listening, the Annoyance theater was like kind of like the redheaded stepchild, but like would get massive audiences and like the best way I could describe it is like the freaks of society in the best possible way. That was who's going to Annoyance shows. Like IO would be like, an eclectic mix, but like mostly like you'd get like some frat guys because after a Cubs game who would wander in, you'd get like some locals too, but like a certain type of clientele. Whereas like Annoyance was like you were getting the people under the stairs and you would get to perform for them. And like I was making those people laugh, and I was like, they don't know who the fuck I am. I am having such a good time, and that is where I really found like the confidence to really go. Like I always say, like I owe so much to Mick and Jen for having that space where we could come in and just do that. But yeah, that was always a thing. I knew I had to make it my own, and I had to have fun in it. And I tell my wife on like probably an amount that annoys her, but like maybe once every 3 months, I'm like, hey, just so you know, I have no problem walking away like from everything. If it ever becomes not fun, or if it ever becomes like where, the income's not coming in, because there's realities of life, and I have kids now, but like, I think being able to like, hold on tightly and let go lightly has been something that made me find the success that I've had in this. And I really don't have any fear for it. I just love what I do, and hopefully it resonates. And if it leads to work, fantastic. And if it doesn't, I'll fucking open a pizza shop in the Italian countryside. I don't, that's really fun too.
Well, I two couple things. I feel like you're basically trying to scam your wife into into pulling all the, letting her work. So, hey, I'm going to let go of this. It's not working for me. Sure, I'm on a few hit shows, but I'm a step away. I'm going to let you do all the work. And then the other thing is, I don't know why Noah would say that to you.
Good guess, but no.
Okay. All right.
He was very sweet to me. He was a very sweet man when I was there, and like a very good teacher too.
Damn it. I was fishing. No, he is. He has such an incredible story.
I got to tell a story about that. No, real quick. So so the way that I like cut my teeth in terms of like learning how to make money from improv, aside from like, just doing free shows in Chicago, which wasn't paid. My comedy partner, Rob Belushi, who I met out there, we would essentially like, I don't want to use the word scam, but when we were not good enough, we would present that we were good enough to like go to like colleges and like do corporate workshops. And we're like, we think there's money in this. And we'd make like, a few $1,000s, which was $1 billion when you're 23 and broke. And one of the shows we did, and by the way, we still do college shows occasionally. We've caught up to ourselves. We're now like, we do bring value, and there is stuff that we teach people.
Yeah.
At the time, we were just like, I can barely make a team at IO, but like this like insurance company in Ohio wants to pay me $4,000 to do a workshop. Okay. But this is how you do it. This is how you hustle. But we did a show at University of Minnesota Moorhead. So it was like, it's actually in Fargo. And we went for their opening, their college group brought us out, and we did a workshop for them, and we were going to do a show with them. And the show is going to be I forget what it's called, when all the prospective students are there, not prospective students, the new students are there with their parents. It's orientation, I guess. And we were going to be the big event. And this college group was also going to do a show, and they had a video component. And the night before the show, they were like, and the nice kids, they were like, check out this funny video sketch we made. And they showed me this sketch that was called Jews Clues instead of Blues Clues. And it was a spoof. And it came up on screen. And this is 2007. So put your mindset of the, acceptable, not acceptable, politically incorrect world back then. We're like, that title would still fly today. Like if you pitch something called Jews Clues, you're done. I'm a Jewish man. And this video came up. No one in the group was Jewish. And I was like, okay, let's see what it is. And it wound up being like a 4-minute sketch of like, they did not intend anything to be offensive. It was mind-blowingly offensive, where it was Blue's friend is or Jew's friend is missing, and the Nazis were coming to the door to look for it. And like, it was just like every bad, I think, when you're starting out in comedy, like, it's like, oh, Nazis are a good source of comedy. And so is like swearing. Like those are like the things you can make fun of. Right.
Sure.
And there are things you can do that gets a reaction. They were trying to poke fun at Nazis, but that's not what wound up happening. It wound up just being like looking pretty anti-Semitic. And they're like, that video ended. They're like, isn't this funny? And I was like, you guys cannot show this video. No one can ever see it. It has to give it to me. If you imagine like you're dropping your kid off at college and like, you're like, I'm going to the parent orientation and this video plays and it's just, I'm like, where am I sending am I sending my kid to like a Hitler youth camp? Like, what the fuck is happening? So I was like, you guys can't do it. To their credit, they totally understood. They were like, we're so sorry. And I was like, here's why it would be not funny. And I understand what you're going for, but it's too late to fix the video. Let's just pull it. So I got a copy of it though. And this ties back into Noah. We came back from our show and like late night, one night after hours at IO, where the place was closed down, but like 10 of us were there. I had the DVD on me, and it was like me and like, 9 of our friends. And I was like, you guys got to fucking see this shit. Like, and they all understood, like, we're watching this because we know how bad it is. And I was like, look what almost happened. Cause I needed to share this. Be like, look how bad this was. Like, this almost aired. And we played it. And I remember Noah came in the theater at one point and saw it and didn't know the context that we were showing it, because we knew it was bad. And we were all laughing at how, like, being like, oh my God, this is so fucking, like, I can't believe they did this. Like, thank God we stopped this from happening to see, but Noah just sees laughter and like these like horrible jokes on screen and flipped out. He's like, what is this? You can't show this. And just like like went into tirade. And like I'd be like, I know. No, hey, it's me. I put this on, and here's the context for it. And then we gave him the context. But I love that man for having what that reaction exactly should be without the proper context. And that is my Noah story. I love that man.
That is such a great story. I would love to see a copy of that. And you know what? I think it can still play. Let's put it up. Can you imagine these kids that were in it? Now they're like business owners and CEO guys. You're like, Jews clues. Where's the missing Jew? I don't know. The Nazis are coming to look for him.
It's crazy. They actually, like, a lot of the move out to LA, they were, of all the college groups that we went to, they were one of like the really great ones. And they've found success in this business. Like, one of them's a producer, one of them's a writer. And I've seen them a couple times out here over the course of the last like 10 years. And I've mentioned the video every time, and it's far enough away that they can laugh about it. And they're like, God, thank God. Thank God.
Thank you. But I love the fact that you and Rob Belushi, so were you guys billed as Barinholtz and Belushi type of a thing?
Yes. We were Jon and Rob, like, we were Barinholtz and Belushi first. We didn't even think about it. We were like, a Barinholtz and Belushi. And then we were like, I mean, what I had in my head being at IO through Ike's thing, multiply that times 1 billion, and then you have it in Rob's head, where like his uncle is known as the face of like modern, slapstick, gross out comedy. And like, so we very quickly bonded over that, wanting to like get good and break free of that. But yeah, we were Barinholtz and Belushi, and like thought about chasing Jon and Rob, and we were like, no, fuck it. That's exactly against what we're trying to do. Like, this is who we are. We're not going to deny who we are. And yeah.
I love it though. You said something very smart there, which was you grew into it. So now if I wanted to hire you, if my company wanted to hire you, if my school wanted to bring you out, you guys can actually back up what you learned. But sometimes it's trial by fire. I remember Salsation in the early times, both applying to a festival that we got into because we didn't know any better, that naivete of we're very good when you know that you're not, but maybe they cut you a little bit of slack. And we got into this great festival. I remember we went out to Oberlin College in Ohio to perform.
Yeah.
And we're like, are we even ready for this? But we're like, well, we got to do it. And, we didn't disappoint. I think sometimes we forget how good we are sometimes coming from Chicago, where even on your worst day, you're still pretty damn good because you're just following the rules of improv, the yes and. So I think
totally. I mean, yeah, when you're in the company of what I considered the people I came up with in Chicago, the ones that went on to make it big and the ones that like just stayed there or went back to their hometown or whatever, they were all the funniest people I knew. And they were so fucking talented. And when you're surrounded by that, you're right. You don't realize, you don't have that perspective of like, well, what happens if you move me over here? Like, I'm not ready because I'm not as funny as, Stacy in my group or Bill in my group. Like, I can't do what they do. But then like you go there and like, oh, even if you can do like 1/10 of what they do, it still blows people away. And you're right. It's a trial by fire thing. And it feels like you feel like a little bit of a pirate that you're like, you came in and you got the loot and like, you did your thing. Like, did I bring value? But like you bring value and then you get better at bringing more value, like you get better.
Wonderful. Well, I remember seeing that back in the day, Jon and Rob, and thinking like, what a great team. So did you guys come out to LA together? And for those that don't know, for those of us that just joined us, I'm Paul Votto. This is Paul Votto Presents. And my guest today is Jon Barinholtz, who came up in Chicago and studied improv and is now in LA. And I want to touch on some of the shows that you're doing right now. But you and Rob Belushi, of course, his family's an icon. His dad's famous, of course, but his uncle being Jon Belushi, there must have been so much weight to that. And then with your brother, Ike Barinholtz. But no, you guys deserve everything that you've gotten because you guys are so massively talented. You've come into that. You learned, you studied, and here you are.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, we bonded over that, having that in common, and kind of that big hurdle we would have to, like, it's that beast that you have to slay before you continue on the next part of your journey, because you can't deny it. You have to go through it. And we bonded over that. Rob trained me at Second City. I was a host. Host is like a fancy term for like, you seat the people before the show and like you clean up vomit when drunk people vomit. Like you're not like on stage hosting, but you get to watch the show 7 nights a week, and it's college. It's invaluable to see like how the best performers in your industry are doing it every single night and making it fresh for them, and how they can at once be robotic and do the same thing and also make it slightly different and nuanced and feel fresh. So like you learn how to be a performer by watching first. But Rob trained me. We became fast friends. We went through Annoyance together, and he was ahead of me in conservatory and ahead of me at IO, I think. We had a 2-man out in IO like my last year there that was just so much fun. And we just got good. And it was the first time I remember being in a show at IO being like, fuck it, I know it's okay now. Like, I know it's okay. I had my partner with me, and like, it was good. And I moved out about a year before him. I came out with these 2 guys, Nick Ehart and Jamie Hodgson. And we came out with a show that we wrote and created in Chicago called Tommy's Place. Killed in Chicago, brought it out here. I was like, all right, it's going to kill. Oh, by the way, I should say in Chicago, you don't have to promote your shows. Like people come to theaters. In LA, it doesn't happen. Like every person that's in that theater is there because you invited them, and they're probably annoyed to be there. So like the first weekend we had sold out house because all our friends, we had our friends get their friends, all that stuff. Then from then on out, I think we had maybe like 10 people over the course of the 6-week run. I was like, oh, fuck, this isn't going to be like, you're out, you got your show, you're ready to go. It's like, it was a long slug. And when Rob came, I came out in like August or July.
What year?
July of 2009, right when everything crashed or after the crash. No one was hiring. It was a horrible time. I knocked every door from Fairfax to Highland on Melrose for work. And the last door that opened was Mozza. And they just opened up their takeout, Mozza to go. And I got a job in the kitchen there. And thank God I got that, because I was like weeks away from having to move back home. And I got that job, and it gave me stability. That was my night job. I got a day job working for an Armenian home health agency doing their books. And those 2 allowed me to survive. Rob came out like 6 months later, 7 months later. We re-upped our 2-man and did a show at the Comedy Central stage. It was fucking great. I had another 2-man show with another friend at the time, and that went really well, and just was able to like get some representation, and got a little small walk-on thing to a co-star on Parks and Rec was the first thing. It was like a 1-line thing. And that like I started stringing together some co-star 1-line parts on various sitcoms from there. And I then had to learn the on-camera world very quickly, because that's one that like, if you fuck up on that, word gets out, you're not ready. And you can go into a waiting line of another fucking 5 years or 10 years or never again. And I was okay in the first one. I was bad in the second one. Hayes MacArthur was on the show, and I remember like, he was buddies with the producers. Producers were nice enough to trust me with this role. I probably, it was a C-. It wasn't an F, but like, I went in being like, you got to kill these little ones at first. And it was a C-. And I was like, oh, I didn't kill it for them. It was still usable, but I was so nervous. And like, I had to fucking quickly adjust to that. And luckily I did. I had some really good mentors out here. Bob Odenkirk was my mentor when I first moved out here. And he gave me a lot of confidence again on the writing side. And then he dusted off the sketch comedy shoes, and I went on tour with him for a little bit, and that like made me settle and be like, it's okay, and was able to start getting a little bit more steady work.
Wow, Jon and I went on and on so much with our shared history in the comedy world that when I looked down at the recording time, we were about to hit 2 hours. So thank you for checking out part 1. Part 2 will be my next episode, so keep your eyes out for that.